I kept my cheating past a secret until now. My fiance's reaction was unforgettable and left me scared for our future. I 42 female am newly dating again after my husband passed away in a car accident 3 years ago. My husband was actually my second husband as I was first married when I was very young, 18. I admit I was not emotionally faithful in my first marriage, but the situation is a bit more nuanced than that. When I was 14, I was introduced to a much older family friend who was 32 and a co-worker of my father's. This man took an interest in me and said I was the kind of person he wanted to marry, and my parents encouraged the relationship because they thought it would be better for me to date a real adult than high school boys my age. My parents also had a similar age gap relationship, although they met when they were a bit older, when my mom was in her early 20s. During the first couple years of the relationship our interactions were largely chaperoned, but once I turned 16 I was allowed to go out on dates with him without other supervision, and he pressured me into Shreks pretty soon. After that my parents said I'd better marry him because I was no longer a virgin. I pretty much felt I had to because I was threatened with getting kicked out otherwise, so we got engaged and then got married once I turned 18 and had graduated from high school. He was 36 then. I will say that I really did not want any of this but didn't feel I had a choice. About the only good things were that I was allowed to go to college. My husband encouraged this and was allowed to use birth control as my husband agreed it would be best to delay having kids until I could graduate from college. Once I started college, I was able to make some friends my own age, including a guy Jay who was in my major accounting and a lot of my classes. At first it was just a regular friendship, but over time we developed feelings for each other. He was the one who helped me figure out that I'd been groomed and worked with me on a plan to leave my husband, including saving every penny I could from my part-time jobs and internships, researching apartments, getting a lawyer, etc. It took a long time but I did manage to leave shortly after I graduated and had a full-time job to support myself. Leaving cost me my relationship with my parents, but I believe it also saved my life. Jay and I never did have a physical relationship. We talked about dating but I wanted to finalize my divorce first to avoid any complications, and by the time it was finalized, I realized I needed therapy and time on my own before I could be ready to be anyone's partner. I worked on myself and met the person who became my second husband a couple years later. In the meantime, Jay had moved to another city for work and met his future wife. We decided at that point it would be best not to be in touch anymore, to avoid muddying things in our new relationships. Still, I recognize that we did have an emotional affair and I did cheat on my first husband. I don't really like to talk about a lot of the details when newly dating someone because it feels like trauma dumping. Usually I just say that I'm a widow, and that I was also married briefly before right out of high school, but that was a mistake due to my age. However, a few friends who know my history have said that my cheating past would likely be a deal breaker for most men and that I need to be transparent about it up front. So I am wondering what everything thinks here. I do think anyone I am going to get serious with deserves to know. Eventually my second husband knew and understood, but it seems too soon to talk about it in the first few dates. I do understand that I was the off for cheating emotionally in my first marriage, regardless of the circumstances, so I'm not asking for a judgment specifically on that. Thanks to anyone who can provide input.